The snow fell in thick, silent sheets over the train station platform. The kind of cold that crept into bones and stayed there. The kind of night that made people walk faster. Heads down, eyes on their own feet. On a wooden bench near the far end of the platform, a small shape lay curled on its side. A girl, maybe 7 years old. Her dress was thin, burgundy-colored, the fabric meant for springtime. Not for this. Her feet were bare against the frozen wood. The edges of her skin had begun to turn blue. Beside her sat a piece of torn cardboard. Someone had written on it with black marker. The words read, "No one's child." Her eyes were closed, but her body shook in small, constant tremors. She was not asleep. She was listening. She had been listening for hours now, to the sound of footsteps passing behind her. Boots, heels, wheels of suitcases dragging through slush. Some of them slowed. Some of them paused. None of them stopped. A woman in a long coat glanced at the bench as she passed. Her eyes moved over the girl and the sign. Then she looked away. She kept walking toward the warmth of the station building. A man with a briefcase did the same. Then another. Then another. The girl had become part of the cold. Just another frozen thing that belonged to the night. Far down the road, a motorcycle engine growled. The sound grew louder, then cut off. A moment later, boots crunched through the snow. Heavy steps. Slow. The sound of someone who was not in a hurry. A man in a black leather jacket walked toward the bench. Patches covered the back of his jacket, marking him as a member of a motorcycle club most people crossed the street to avoid. His face was half hidden by a dark bandana. His eyes were sharp, scanning the platform the way a man scans a room full of strangers. He stopped a few feet from the bench. His gaze moved from the girl's bare feet to the cardboard sign, then back to her face. His jaw tightened beneath the bandana. The girl's fingers twitched against the wood. Her eyelids fluttered but did not open. She had heard the boots. She had felt the presence of a stranger standing close, but she did not move. She did not call out. She had learned that calling out made things worse. She had learned that adults who stopped were not always safe. The biker stepped closer. Then he knelt in the snow. The cold soaked through his jeans immediately. He did not adjust. He did not stand. He stayed low, studying her face. The blue tint around her lips, the shallow rise and fall of her chest, the way her fingers curled like she was trying to hold on to something that was not there. He looked at the sign again. No one's child. 3 words written in a stranger's hand. 3 words that meant someone had left her here on purpose. His hand moved toward her shoulder. Then it stopped. He held it there, hovering just above the thin fabric of her dress. He knew how this looked. A man like him, dressed like him, reaching for a child alone in the dark. He knew what people would think. He knew what people might say. Behind him, the station door opened. A worker in a gray uniform stepped outside, a cigarette between his fingers. He looked at the bench. He looked at the biker kneeling in the snow. His eyes moved to the girl, then to the sign. For a moment, he stood there. Then he turned and walked back inside without a word. The door clicked shut behind him. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn sounded, long and low. The girl's chest rose again, slower this time. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. The biker exhaled. His breath formed a cloud of white in the frozen air. His hand stayed where it was, hovering between rescue and ruin. One touch could save her. One touch could also end everything he had built. His reputation, his freedom, his life. He looked at her face again. The blue was spreading now, creeping from her lips toward her cheeks. She was running out of time. His fingers trembled. Not from the cold. He had 5 seconds to decide what kind of man he was. Lily Brennan walked home from school the same way she always did. Down Miller Street, past the hardware store, across the train tracks, and up the narrow staircase beside the laundromat. She was 7 years old. She carried a backpack that was almost too big for her. Her shoes were worn at the heels but clean. The room above the laundromat was small. One window faced the street. A mattress sat in the corner with a quilt her mother had found at a thrift store. The walls were covered in drawings, stick figures with big smiles. A yellow sun in every picture. A house with a red door that did not exist anywhere but in Lily's mind. Her mother's name was Sarah. Sarah Brennan was 29 years old. She worked double shifts at a diner 3 miles down the road. She left before the sun came up. She came home after it went down. Most days, Lily only saw her for an hour before bed. Sarah kissed Lily's forehead every night and whispered the same thing. "You're the strongest girl I know." Lily believed her. She had to. There was no father. There had never been one. Not really. He left before Lily was born. Sarah never talked about him. Lily learned not to ask. There was no family, no aunts, no uncles, no grandparents who called on birthdays. It was just the two of them, living above the hum of washing machines and the smell of detergent that never quite faded. But there was Mrs. Grady. She lived in the apartment next door. She was 73 years old with gray hair and hands that shook when she poured tea. She watched Lily every afternoon for free because she remembered what it was like to be young and tired and alone. Mrs. Grady taught Lily how to play cards. She let her watch old movies on a television that flickered when the wind blew. She made grilled cheese sandwiches with the crusts cut off because Lily once mentioned she did not like them. Lily knew the rules. Her mother had repeated them 100 times. Do not open the door for anyone. Do not talk to strangers. Walk straight home from school. If something feels wrong, run to Mrs. Grady's door and knock 3 times. These were not suggestions. These were survival. In a town like Miller's Crossing, with no money and no backup, the rules were the only thing standing between Lily and the world outside. But there was something Sarah had not told her. Something Sarah hoped would never matter. 2 years ago, Sarah had a boyfriend. His name was Dean Hollister. He was tall, quiet, and smiled in a way that made people trust him. At first he was kind. He brought flowers. He fixed the leak under the sink. He told Sarah she deserved better than this life. Then he changed. He never hit her. He never raised his voice. But he watched. He counted the minutes when she was late. He asked who she talked to, who she looked at, who she smiled at. He hated when Lily was in the room. He said the child was always in the way. He said Sarah would never be free as long as she had the girl. Sarah ended it. She told him to leave. She changed the locks and stopped answering his calls. For a while, he stood outside the laundromat at night, just watching the window. Then one day, he was gone. That was 2 years ago. Sarah told herself it was over. She told herself he had moved on. She told herself that Lily was safe. She was wrong. Dean Hollister had come back to Miller's Crossing 3 weeks ago. He had not knocked on Sarah's door. He had not called. He had not sent a letter. He had simply returned, quiet as a shadow, and started watching. He watched Sarah walk to work in the morning. He watched her come home at night. He watched the window above the laundromat and counted the hours she spent inside. And he watched Lily. The girl walked home from school every day at 3:15. She crossed at the same crosswalk. She stopped at the same corner. She looked both ways, just like her mother taught her. She never noticed the gray sedan parked in the shadow of the grocery store across the street. She never noticed the man sitting inside, his face hidden behind the windshield's glare. She never noticed that he had been there for 3 days in a row, at the same time, in the same spot, watching her with eyes that did not blink. The crosswalk signal changed. Lily stepped off the curb and walked across the street. Her backpack bounced against her spine. Her worn shoes scraped against the pavement. Behind her, the man in the sedan did not move. He did not follow. Not yet, but his decision had already been made. Lily Brennan was the key. She was the way back to Sarah. And if Sarah would not come back on her own, then he would take something she could not live without. The girl disappeared around the corner. The sedan's engine stayed silent. The man behind the wheel smiled for the first time in weeks. Dean Hollister sat in the parking lot of the Bluebird Diner, engine off, eyes locked on the window. Inside, Sarah moved between tables with a coffee pot in her hand. She smiled at a man sitting alone at the counter. The man said something. She laughed. Her hand touched her chest the way it used to when Dean made her laugh. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. The man at the counter leaned forward. Sarah refilled his cup. She lingered there a moment too long. Dean's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. He had been watching for 19 days now. 19 days of sitting in parking lots, driving past the laundromat, counting the hours Sarah spent away from the room where she slept. He told himself he was just checking in, just making sure she was okay, just seeing if she had changed. She had not changed. She was still beautiful, still tired, still giving pieces of herself to strangers who did not deserve her. Dean was 34 years old. He had not worked in 8 months. The motel room he rented smelled like mold and cigarette smoke from the people who stayed before him. He ate fast food twice a day and drank whiskey until the thoughts slowed down enough to let him sleep. He was not a bad man. That was what he told himself. He had tried to be good. He had tried to love Sarah the right way. He had fixed her sink. He had paid for groceries when she ran short. He had held her when she cried about money. about exhaustion, about the weight of raising a child alone. And then she threw him away. 2 years. 2 years of silence. 2 years of wondering what he did wrong. 2 years of replaying every conversation, every fight, every moment she pulled away from him. He had edited the memories so many times he could no longer tell what was real and what he had invented. In his mind, the story was simple. He gave her everything. She gave him nothing. She chose the child over him. The child that was not even his. The child that looked at him like he was a stranger in his own home. The child that cried when he raised his voice, that hid behind Sarah's legs, that made him feel like a monster, just for wanting 5 minutes alone with the woman he loved. Sarah never understood. She never saw what he sacrificed. She never thanked him for staying as long as he did. Inside the diner, the man at the counter stood up. He left money on the counter and walked toward the door. Sarah watched him go. She was still smiling. Dean's chest burned. His fingers trembled against the steering wheel. She had already moved on. She had already forgotten him. She was giving that smile to someone else now. And Dean was sitting in a cold car in a parking lot like he did not exist. He closed his eyes. He breathed through his nose. He tried to remember the exercises the therapist taught him 3 years ago, before he stopped going, before he decided the therapist was just another person who did not understand. It did not work. The anger stayed. It always stayed. He opened his eyes and looked at the diner one more time. Sarah had moved to the kitchen window. She was laughing at something the cook said. Her shoulders relaxed. Her face softened. She looked happy. She looked like she had never missed him at all. Dean pulled out of the parking lot. He did not know where he was going. He just drove. Past the hardware store. Past the train tracks. Past the grocery store where he had parked 3 days in a row. Watching the girl walk home from school. Lily. The name sat in his mouth like something sour. He remembered how she used to look at him. Wide eyes, silent mouth, shoulders hunched like she was waiting for him to yell. She never gave him a chance. She poisoned Sarah against him before he even had a chance to prove himself. That was the truth. That was the story he had told himself so many times it had become real. He pulled into the motel parking lot. He sat in the car for a long time, staring at the door to his room. His hands shook. His head pounded. The whiskey he drank that morning had worn off hours ago. He reached into the back seat and pulled out a piece of cardboard he had found behind the gas station. He stared at it for a while. Then he reached into the glove box and pulled out a black marker. He wrote 3 words. His handwriting was slow and careful. Each letter pressed hard into the cardboard. No one's child. He did not know exactly how he would use it. He did not have a full plan. But he knew one thing. Sarah needed to understand what it felt like to lose something she loved. She needed to feel the kind of fear that woke you up at night and never let you go. Dean folded the cardboard and walked to the trunk of his car. He placed it inside, next to a roll of duct tape and a blanket he had bought at a thrift store 3 days ago. Tomorrow, he would make sure Sarah learned what it meant to have everything taken away. Marcus Cole gripped the handlebars of his motorcycle and stared at the empty road ahead. The headlight cut through the falling snow, illuminating nothing but white. His fuel gauge had been blinking for the last 20 miles. He needed to stop soon or he would be walking. The club gathering was 2 towns over. His brothers were already there, probably warming themselves by a fire, drinking coffee, trading stories about the roads they had ridden. Stone was supposed to be with them. He was supposed to be laughing, or at least sitting in the corner the way he always did, quiet but present. Instead, he was riding alone through Miller's Crossing at 11 o'clock at night, searching for a gas pump that was still open. They called him Stone because he never flinched. He never raised his voice. He never showed fear, even when fear was the only reasonable response. His face was weathered from years of wind and sun and grief. His eyes saw everything and revealed nothing. He was 47 years old. He had been riding for 30 of those years. The club was his family now, the only family he had left. There had been another family once. A wife named Rachel. A daughter named Emma. A small house with a yellow door and a swing set in the backyard. He used to push Emma on that swing every evening after dinner. She would laugh and beg him to push higher. He always did. Emma was 5 years old when she disappeared. Stone pulled into the train station parking lot. The gas pump glowed under a single light. He cut the engine and sat for a moment, listening to the silence. The snow fell around him, soft and steady. He did not think about Emma often. He had trained himself not to. The memories were too sharp, too heavy, too dangerous to carry while riding. But sometimes, on nights like this, they came anyway. He had been inside the grocery store for less than 4 minutes. He remembered looking at his watch as he walked through the door. He remembered grabbing milk, bread, and a box of Emma's favorite cereal. He remembered smiling at the cashier. He remembered walking back outside with the bag in his hand and stopping in the middle of the parking lot because something was wrong. The car was still there. The door was still closed. But Emma was gone. 3 days. That was how long it took to find her. 3 days of searching, of praying, of bargaining with a God he had never believed in before. They found her in a basement 60 miles away. Alive. Breathing. But not the same. Never the same. She stopped speaking after that. She stopped eating without being told. She stopped looking people in the eyes. The therapist said she might recover with time. Stone believed them. He had to believe them. 2 years later, Emma swallowed a bottle of pills that were supposed to help her sleep. The doctors called it an accident. Stone knew better. He knew his daughter had been fighting something she could not name, something that lived inside her since those 3 days in the dark. He lost Rachel after that. Not to death, but to silence. They could not look at each other without seeing what they had lost. The divorce was quiet. The house was sold. Stone rode away and did not come back. The club saved him. His brothers gave him a reason to keep moving. They gave him a code, unwritten but unbreakable. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. Women, children, the weak, the forgotten. This was not charity. This was purpose. Stone climbed off his bike and walked toward the gas pump. His boots crunched through the snow. His breath formed clouds in the frozen air. He was halfway across the lot when he saw her. A girl on a bench, curled on her side, bare feet, thin dress, a piece of cardboard beside her with words he could not yet read. He stopped walking. His chest tightened. His hands curled into fists inside his gloves. She looked like Emma. Not exactly, but enough. The same small frame. The same helpless stillness. The same posture of someone who had stopped expecting help a long time ago. Stone walked closer. He read the words on the cardboard. No one's child. His jaw clenched beneath the bandana that covered his face. He knelt in the snow. The cold soaked through his jeans immediately. He did not care. The girl's fingers twitched. Her eyelids fluttered. She knew he was there. She was awake, or close to it. But she did not open her eyes. She did not move. She had learned that stillness was safer than hope. Stone stared at her face. The blue tint around her lips. The shallow breathing. The way her body shook in small, constant tremors. He knew what would happen if he touched her. A man like him, dressed like him, kneeling beside a child in the dark. People would assume the worst. They always did. But he also knew what would happen if he walked away. He would become the thing he had spent 12 years fighting. He would become the man who did nothing while a child suffered. His hand hovered above her shoulder. The snow kept falling. The world held its breath. Stone's hand touched the girl's shoulder. The fabric of her dress was thin and damp, almost frozen to her skin. She flinched beneath his fingers but did not open her eyes. She did not scream. She did not pull away. She was too far gone for that. He made his decision in less than a heartbeat. His fingers moved to the zipper of his leather jacket. He pulled it down and shrugged the jacket off his shoulders. The cold hit him immediately, slicing through his flannel shirt like it was made of paper. He did not care. He wrapped the jacket around the girl's body, tucking it beneath her, pulling it up to her chin. She was so small. The jacket swallowed her completely. Stone slid one arm beneath her knees and the other behind her back. He lifted her from the bench in a single smooth motion. She weighed almost nothing, maybe 40 pounds. Maybe less. Her head fell against his chest. Her bare feet dangled in the air. Her eyes opened for a moment. Wide, glassy, filled with something that looked like terror and hope at the same time. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then her eyes closed again. Her body went limp in his arms. He turned toward the station building. The windows glowed with fluorescent light. Someone was inside. Someone who could call for help. Stone walked through the snow. The girl pressed against his chest. His boots left deep prints in the white. His breath came out in short bursts of fog. The cold was already working its way into his bones. But he did not slow down. The station door was heavy. He pushed it open with his shoulder and stepped inside. The warmth hit him like a wall. It was almost painful after the cold outside. The worker behind the counter looked up. He was young, maybe 25, with a thin mustache and nervous eyes. His gaze moved from Stone's face to the patches on his shirt, then down to the girl wrapped in black leather. His hand moved toward the phone on the counter. Stone held up one palm. He kept his voice low and steady. Found her on the bench outside. She's been out there too long. She needs an ambulance. The worker did not move. His fingers hovered above the phone. His eyes stayed on Stone's face, searching for something he could trust. He saw the bandana. He saw the patches. He saw a man who looked like the kind of man mothers warned their children about. Stone did not have time for this. He walked past the counter and laid the girl on a wooden bench near the heater. He kept his jacket wrapped tight around her body. Her breathing was shallow but steady. Her lips were still blue. He turned back to the worker. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it now. Something that did not ask. Call 911. Now. The worker picked up the phone. His hands were shaking. He dialed the numbers and spoke in short, broken sentences. He described the station, the girl, the man in the leather vest. He said he did not know what was happening. He said he needed someone to come. Stone knelt beside the bench. He watched the girl's chest rise and fall. He counted the seconds between each breath. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, the heater hummed. The ambulance would take at least 10 minutes, maybe more in this weather. Stone did not know if the girl had 10 minutes. He did not know anything about her except that she was alive and that someone had left her to die. He noticed something then. A piece of cardboard, damp and crumpled, tucked beneath her arm. He had seen it on the bench outside but had not looked closely. Now he pulled it free and held it up to the light. 3 words. Black marker, careful handwriting. No one's child. Stone's jaw tightened. His fingers curled around the edges of the cardboard until it bent. Someone had written this. Someone had placed it beside her. Someone had wanted her to be found exactly like this, frozen and forgotten, with a message that said she belonged to no one. This was not an accident. This was not a mother who lost track of her daughter. This was deliberate. This was cruelty, made visible. The sirens grew louder in the distance. Red and blue lights flickered through the station windows, reflecting off the snow. Help was coming. The girl would survive. But Stone knew that survival was only the beginning. Somewhere out there, the person who did this was still free. Still watching. Still waiting to see what happened next. He looked down at the girl's face. Her eyes were still closed. Her breathing had steadied. She looked almost peaceful now, wrapped in his jacket, surrounded by warmth. He made a silent promise to her. He did not know her name. He did not know her story. But he knew one thing for certain. Whoever did this would answer for it. The ambulance doors flew open before the vehicle fully stopped. 2 paramedics jumped out and ran toward the station entrance, a stretcher rattling between them. Their boots echoed on the concrete. Their breath came out in white clouds. Stone stepped back as they pushed through the door. He pointed to the bench where Lily lay, wrapped in his jacket. He kept his voice steady. Found her outside on the platform. She's been in the cold for hours. Her lips were blue when I picked her up. The first paramedic knelt beside Lily and pressed 2 fingers to her neck. She counted silently, her eyes on her watch. The second paramedic opened a bag and pulled out thermal blankets, oxygen tubing, monitoring equipment. They worked in quick, practiced movements, speaking to each other in short phrases that Stone did not try to follow. Lily's eyes fluttered open as they lifted her onto the stretcher. She looked up at the faces above her, strangers in uniforms, and her mouth opened. No sound came out. Her fingers reached toward something that was not there. Stone watched them carry her out. The ambulance doors closed behind her. The sirens wailed again, then faded into the distance. He stood in the doorway of the station, his arms bare in the cold, and watched the red lights disappear down the road. A patrol car pulled into the lot 2 minutes later. A young deputy stepped out, one hand on his belt, the other holding a flashlight. His name tag read Martinez. He looked like he had been on the job less than a year. He walked towards Stone with careful steps. His eyes moved from Stone's face to the patches on his flannel shirt, then back again. He stopped about 6 feet away. Stone spoke first. I'm the one who called it in. Found the girl on the bench outside. She was barely breathing. Deputy Martinez pulled out a notepad. He asked for identification. Stone reached into his back pocket slowly, making sure his hands were visible, and handed over his license. Martinez studied it for a long moment before writing something down. The questions came one after another. Where was Stone coming from? Where was he going? Why did he stop at this station? How long had he been in the area? Stone answered, each one calmly. He explained the club gathering 2 towns over. He explained the low fuel gauge. He explained the girl on the bench and the sign beside her. Martinez asked about the sign. Stone told him he had left it inside, that the writing said no one's child, that someone had placed it there on purpose. Martinez's expression shifted. He stopped writing for a moment and looked at Stone differently. He asked Stone to wait. Then he walked inside to bag the cardboard as evidence. At the county hospital, 15 miles down the road, Lily was wheeled into the emergency department. The doctors moved quickly. Her core temperature was 89 degrees. Another hour in the cold and her heart would have stopped. They wrapped her in heated blankets. They started an IV to warm her blood from the inside. They monitored her pulse, her oxygen, her brain activity. By midnight, her temperature was climbing back toward normal. Her color was returning. She would survive. A social worker arrived just after 1 in the morning. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and tired eyes. She sat beside Lily's bed and spoke softly, asking simple questions. What is your name? How old are you? Where do you live? Do you know where your mother is? Lily stared at the ceiling. Her lips moved slightly, but no words came out. Her eyes were open, but she was somewhere else. Somewhere the social worker could not reach. The only thing Lily said all night came in a whisper so quiet the social worker had to lean close to hear it. There was a car, then there was a bench, then I was cold. Back at the train station, Deputy Martinez ran the fingerprints from the cardboard sign through the county database. The system returned a match in less than 3 minutes. Dean Hollister, male, 34 years old. Last known address, a motel on Route 9. Martinez scrolled through the file. Restraining order violations, harassment complaints, stalking reports, all filed by the same woman, Sarah Brennan. Current address listed as an apartment above a laundromat in Miller's Crossing. He radioed for backup, then he drove. The apartment door was unlocked when he arrived. The lights were on. The television played softly in the corner, but no one was inside. Martinez walked through the small space, his hand on his weapon. He found Sarah's phone on the kitchen table. Her coat hung on a hook by the door. A cup of coffee sat half-finished on the counter, still warm. On the table beside the phone, there was a note. The handwriting was the same as the cardboard sign. Careful, deliberate, cold. Martinez read the words. Then he reached for his radio. Sarah Brennan's hands stopped moving the moment Dean Hollister walked through the diner door. She was holding a coffee pot, refilling a customer's cup, and her fingers went still in midair. The coffee kept pouring for 2 seconds before she caught herself. Dean sat down at the counter, 3 stools away from the man Sarah had been talking to earlier. He folded his hands on the surface and smiled at her like they were old friends. Her coworker, Linda, looked up from the register. She did not know Dean. She did not see the danger. She just saw a man in a clean jacket with a polite expression on his face. Dean ordered coffee. Black. He said it quietly, almost friendly. Sarah poured the cup without looking at his face. Her hand shook slightly. A few drops splashed onto the counter. He waited until she set the pot down. Then he leaned forward, just enough for her to hear, and spoke in a voice that sounded like a suggestion. You should go home early tonight, Sarah. Check on your girl. He said it with that smile. The one she remembered from 2 years ago. The one that meant something was already in motion. Something she could not stop. Sarah's chest tightened. Her mouth went dry. She wanted to scream, wanted to call for help, wanted to throw the coffee in his face, but she did none of those things. She stood frozen behind the counter while Dean finished his cup, left a $5 bill, and walked out without another word. Linda asked if she was okay. Sarah did not answer. She untied her apron, grabbed her coat, and ran out the back door. The walk home took 22 minutes. Sarah made it in 14. She ran through the cold, her breath coming in sharp gasps, her mind spinning through every terrible possibility. Dean had found them. Dean had been watching. Dean was doing something, and she did not know what. She reached the laundromat and sprinted up the narrow staircase. The apartment door was unlocked. She pushed it open and called Lily's name. No answer. She checked the bedroom. Empty. She checked the bathroom. Empty. She ran to Mrs. Grady's door and knocked. No answer. She knocked again, harder. Still nothing. Sarah ran back down to the street. She looked left and right, calling Lily's name until her voice cracked. A woman walking her dog stared at her but kept moving. A man getting out of his car pretended not to hear. She ran to the school. The gates were locked. She ran to the park. The swings hung empty in the dark. She ran to the grocery store where Lily sometimes waited when she was scared. The manager said he had not seen any children that day. Sarah's phone buzzed. She stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and looked at the screen. Unknown number. One message. She's safe. For now, meet me at the rail yard. Alone. If you call anyone, she won't be. Sarah stared at the words until the screen went dark. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. She wanted to call the police. She wanted to scream for help. But the message was clear. If she called anyone, Lily would not be safe. She walked to the rail yard alone. It took her 40 minutes in the dark. The cold cut through her coat, but she barely felt it. Her mind was somewhere else. Somewhere Lily was waiting. Somewhere she could not reach. Dean was standing near an abandoned freight car when she arrived. His hands were in his pockets. His breath made clouds in the air. He watched her approach with that same smile on his face. Sarah stopped 10 feet away. Her voice came out broken. Where is she? Dean tilted his head. Somewhere warm, somewhere safe. She's fine, Sarah. I just wanted to talk. Sarah's hands curled into fists. Tell me where she is. Dean shook his head slowly. Not yet. First you're going to listen. You owe me that much. 2 years, Sarah. 2 years I waited for you to come back. 2 years I spent trying to figure out what I did wrong. Sarah felt the tears burning her eyes. She did not care what he wanted to say. She did not care about his feelings. She only cared about Lily. But she stood there and listened. She had no choice. While Dean talked, 15 miles away, Lily lay frozen on a bench. Her skin had turned blue. Her breathing had slowed to almost nothing. The cardboard sign beside her read, "No one's child." And neither Sarah nor Dean knew that a stranger in leather had already found her. A man who did not know her name. A man who did not ask for permission. A man who wrapped her in his jacket and carried her into the warmth. The ending Dean had written was already being rewritten. He just did not know it yet. Stone stood outside the train station with his phone pressed to his ear. The snow had slowed to a light dusting. His breath still formed clouds in the frozen air. He had not put his jacket back on. It was still wrapped around the girl in the ambulance. The line rang twice before a voice answered. Deep, calm, familiar. Stone spoke quietly. It's me. I need you to listen. He told the story in short sentences. The girl on the bench. The sign beside her. The blue color of her skin. The way she looked at him when he lifted her from the cold. He told them about the words on the cardboard. No one's child. He told them someone had done this on purpose. The voice on the other end did not interrupt. When Stone finished, there was a long pause. Then the voice said, Where are you? Stone gave the location. The voice said they would be there in 2 hours. He ended the call and slid the phone back into his pocket. He stood in the cold for another moment, watching the snow fall, thinking about what he had just set in motion. The club did not get involved in police matters. That was the rule. They did not draw attention. They did not make themselves targets. They handled their own business and stayed out of everyone else's. But some things could not be ignored. Some things demanded a response. 2 hours later, 6 motorcycles rolled into Miller's Crossing. They did not ride in fast or loud. They came quietly, engines rumbling low, headlights cutting through the dark. They parked at a diner on the edge of town and walked inside without a word. Stone was already sitting in the back booth. He watched his brothers file in and take their seats. These were not young men. They were fathers, grandfathers, veterans, men who had buried friends and raised children and seen what the world could do to the innocent. The last one to sit was Ridge. He was 63 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a short ponytail and deep lines carved into his face. He had led the club for 19 years. He did not speak often, but when he did, people listened. Ridge folded his hands on the table and looked at Stone. Tell me again, Stone told him. The same story, the same details, the same words. Ridge listened, without interrupting. His eyes stayed fixed on Stone's face the entire time. When Stone finished, Ridge was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded once. We'll assist, within limits. He laid out the rules. No breaking laws. No interfering with police. No drawing attention that could bring heat on the club. But they would watch. They would protect. And if the man who did this came within reach, they would make sure he understood the weight of his choices. The brothers nodded. No one argued. No one asked questions. They knew what this meant. They had all been fathers once, or still were. They had all held children in their arms and wondered what they would do if someone tried to hurt them. 15 miles away, The police investigation was moving fast. Deputy Martinez had called in backup the moment he read the note in Sarah's apartment. Patrol units spread out across Miller's Crossing, searching for any sign of Sarah Brennan or Dean Hollister. They found Sarah at the rail yard just before midnight. She was sitting on a rusted freight car, her arms wrapped around her knees, her body shaking. Dean was gone. He had left only minutes before the cruisers arrived. The officers approached slowly. They called her name. Sarah did not respond at first. Her eyes were distant, her face pale, her lips cracked from the cold. One of the officers crouched beside her. He spoke gently. "Ma'am, we found your daughter. She's alive. She's at the hospital. She's safe." Sarah's face crumpled. The sound that came out of her was not a word. It was something deeper, something that had been trapped inside her chest for hours. She collapsed against the officer and wept. They helped her into the back of a patrol car. They wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. They drove her toward the hospital, toward Lily, toward the only thing in the world that mattered to her. On the other side of town, Dean Hollister drove his gray sedan down a dark road. His hands were steady on the wheel. His face was calm. He believed he had won. He believed Sarah had finally understood what she had done to him. He did not know that Lily was alive. He did not know that a biker had found her in the snow. He did not know that 7 men were now gathered in a diner booth, speaking his name in low voices. He drove into the dark, certain that he had taken everything from Sarah. He had no idea that everything was about to be taken from him. Sarah Brennan pushed through the emergency room doors before the patrol car behind her had fully stopped. Her feet hit the tile floor and she ran. A security guard called after her. She did not slow down. A nurse stepped into the hallway and reached for her arm. Sarah pulled away and kept moving. The nurse caught up with her halfway down the corridor. She spoke calmly, firmly. "Ma'am, I'll take you to her. Follow me." Sarah followed. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Her hands shook at her sides. The hallway stretched on forever. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Every door they passed looked the same. Then they turned a corner and the nurse pointed to a room at the end of the hall. Sarah stopped walking. Her breath caught in her throat. Through the window, she could see a small figure sitting up in a hospital bed. Blankets wrapped around her shoulders. An IV line running into her arm. Dark hair tangled against a white pillow. Lily. Sarah's legs nearly gave out beneath her. She steadied herself against the wall for a moment, just long enough to remember how to breathe. Then she walked forward and pushed open the door. Lily's head turned at the sound. Her eyes found her mother's face. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Lily's chin trembled. Her lips pressed together. Her small body began to shake. The tears came silently at first, sliding down her pale cheeks. Then a sound escaped her, something between a sob and a breath, and she reached out with both arms. Sarah crossed the room in 3 steps. She gathered her daughter into her arms and held her so tightly the blankets bunched between them. She did not speak. She did not have words. She pressed her face against Lily's hair and rocked her gently, back and forth, back and forth. The nurses stepped back. The doctor in the doorway lowered his clipboard. No one spoke. No one moved. The room held its breath while a mother and daughter found each other again. Minutes passed. Maybe 5. Maybe more. Sarah did not count. She held Lily until the shaking stopped. She held her until the sobs faded into quiet breathing. She held her until the world outside the room stopped existing. Finally, Sarah lifted her head. Her eyes were red. Her face was streaked with tears. But something in her had settled. Something broken had begun to heal. She looked around the room for the first time. The monitors beeped softly. The IV bag dripped at a steady pace. A chair sat beside the bed, and on it was a jacket. It was large, black leather, worn at the elbows and patched across the back. It smelled like engine oil and cold winter air. It did not belong to anyone in this room. Sarah looked at the nurse standing near the door. "Whose jacket is that?" The nurse hesitated for a moment. "A man brought your daughter into the station. He found her on a bench outside. He wrapped her in his jacket and carried her inside. He called 911. He stayed until the ambulance arrived." Sarah's hand moved toward the jacket. Her fingers touched the leather. "Where is he now?" The nurse shook her head. "He gave his statement to the police and left. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't leave a number." Sarah lifted the jacket from the chair and held it against her chest. The leather was cold but heavy, solid. It felt like the weight of something she could not name. She did not know this man. She had never seen his face, but he had held her daughter when she was freezing. He had carried her to safety when no one else cared enough to stop. He had given her his own jacket and asked for nothing in return. Sarah pressed the leather against her heart and closed her eyes. Outside, in the hospital parking lot, Stone sat alone on his motorcycle. The engine was off. His hands rested on his thighs. He had not moved in over an hour. He watched the emergency entrance through the falling snow. He saw the police cruiser pull up. He saw Sarah run through the doors. He saw the nurse follow her inside. He did not go in. He did not want to intrude. The girl was safe now. The mother was with her. That was all that mattered. But he could not leave. Not yet. He needed to know the girl would be okay. He needed to see it with his own eyes, even from a distance. The snow settled on his shoulders. The cold worked its way into his bones. He did not move. Then another car pulled into the lot. A dark sedan with no markings. Two people stepped out. A man and a woman in plain clothes. Detectives. Stone recognized the look. The way they walked. The way their eyes scanned the lot before they moved toward the entrance. Something had changed. Something in the investigation had shifted. Stone watched them disappear through the doors. His jaw tightened beneath the bandana that still covered his face. The hunt for Dean Hollister had just entered a new phase. The detectives walked into Lily's hospital room with their badges already out. The woman introduced herself as Detective Warren. The man beside her was Detective Oakes. They spoke quietly, respectfully, but their presence filled the room with a different kind of weight. Sarah stood beside Lily's bed. She had not let go of her daughter's hand since she arrived. Her eyes moved from Warren to Oakes and back again. She did not trust easily. She had learned not to. Warren spoke first. "Miss Brennan, we need your help. Dean Hollister is now wanted on multiple charges: child endangerment, kidnapping, custodial interference. We need to find him before he hurts anyone else." Sarah's jaw tightened. Her grip on Lily's hand did not loosen. "What do you need to know?" Warren pulled out a small notebook. "Anything you can tell us. Places he used to go, people he knew, routines, habits. Anything that might help us figure out where he's running?" Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about the 2 years she had spent trying to forget Dean Hollister. The bars he drank at, the friends he complained about, the motel where he stayed when she finally kicked him out. She had buried these memories deep. Now, she had to dig them up. She told them everything. The names, the places, the way he drove when he was angry, the route he always took when he wanted to disappear for a few days. She spoke for nearly 20 minutes, her voice steady but tired. When she finished, Warren closed the notebook. "Thank you. We'll find him." Sarah looked at her daughter. Lily was asleep now, her small chest rising and falling beneath the hospital blankets. "Make sure he can't do this to anyone else." Warren nodded once. Then the detectives left. 40 miles outside of Miller's Crossing, the club was already moving. They did not search the way police searched. They did not use radios or databases. They used their eyes, their ears, their connections. Two brothers visited a bar on the outskirts of town where Dean used to drink. The bartender remembered him. Said he had not been in for months, but a woman who worked the register mentioned seeing a gray sedan headed east on Route 9 earlier that night. Another brother stopped at a gas station near the county line. The attendant remembered a man who paid cash for a full tank and a pack of cigarettes. Nervous eyes, shaking hands, gray sedan. Ridge coordinated from the diner booth, taking calls, marking locations on a map spread across the table. The trail was forming. It pointed east, toward a strip of cheap motels along the old highway. Stone rode alone. He followed the trail his brothers had marked. He stopped at each location, asked the same questions, received the same answers. Gray sedan, nervous man, heading east. By 2 in the morning, he found what he was looking for. The motel was called the Pine Rest Inn. It sat at the edge of a gravel lot, 10 rooms in a row, half of them dark. A neon sign buzzed above the office door. The parking lot was nearly empty. But in front of room 12, there was a gray sedan. Stone pulled his motorcycle to the edge of the lot and cut the engine. He did not move. He sat in the dark and watched the door. The curtains were drawn. A faint light flickered behind them. Probably a television left on. He thought about what he wanted to do. He thought about the girl on the bench. The blue color of her lips. The sign that said "No one's child." He thought about Emma. He thought about the 12 years he had spent living with a weight he could never set down. The man inside that room had left a child to die. He had written a message designed to break a mother's heart. He had done something unforgivable, and Stone wanted him to answer for it. but he stayed on his bike. He did not move toward the door. He knew the police were close. He knew that what he wanted and what was right were not always the same thing. Then headlights appeared at the entrance of the parking lot. They swept across the gravel and stopped near the office. A sheriff's cruiser. 2 deputies inside. Stone watched them step out of the vehicle. They walked toward the office first, spoke briefly with the clerk, then turned and looked at room 12. They knew. The trail had led them here too. Stone sat in the shadows. Invisible. Unmoving. His hands rested on his thighs. His eyes stayed fixed on the door. The deputies approached room 12. One of them knocked. The sound echoed across the empty lot. Inside, Dean Hollister woke up. The second knock on room 12 was louder than the first. The deputy's fist struck the door 3 times, hard and deliberate. His partner stood 2 steps back, hand resting on his holster. Inside, Dean Hollister sat up in bed. His eyes were unfocused. His head pounded from the whiskey he had finished hours ago. The television flickered in the corner, casting shadows across the stained carpet. The knock came again. A voice followed. Sheriff's Department. Open the door. Dean swung his legs off the bed. His feet hit the floor, and he stumbled toward the window. He pulled back the curtain just enough to see the parking lot. Red and blue lights flashed across the gravel. 2 cruisers. Then a third pulled in behind them. His stomach dropped. He turned back toward the room, searching for something. His keys. His wallet. A way out. But there was no back door. There was no window on the other side. There was only the front entrance and the uniforms waiting on the other side of it. The door crashed inward. The frame splintered. 2 deputies rushed inside with their weapons drawn. Dean threw his hands up and stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of the bed. Get on the ground. Now. He dropped to his knees. Then to his chest. The carpet smelled like cigarette smoke and mildew. A knee pressed into his back. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists. They pulled him to his feet. His shirt was twisted. His hair stuck to his forehead with sweat. His eyes darted around the room, looking for an explanation, looking for someone to blame. One of the deputies read him his rights. Dean heard the words but did not process them. His mind was somewhere else. He was thinking about Sarah. He was thinking about the girl on the bench. He was thinking about how this was supposed to end differently. They led him out of the room and into the cold night air. The flashing lights painted the motel walls in red and blue. The manager stood near the office, arms crossed, watching without expression. A small crowd had gathered at the edge of the lot, drawn by the noise. Dean looked across the parking lot. He saw a man sitting on a motorcycle near the entrance. The man did not move. He did not speak. He just watched. Dean did not recognize him. He had never seen his face before. But something about the way the man sat there, still and silent, made his skin crawl. The man's eyes were locked on his. They did not blink. A deputy pushed Dean toward the cruiser. He stumbled but kept his footing. He looked back at the man on the motorcycle one more time. The man had not moved. He was still watching. Dean was placed in the back seat of the cruiser. The door slammed shut beside him. The deputy spoke briefly outside the window, then climbed into the front. The engine started. The cruiser pulled out of the parking lot. Dean twisted in his seat and looked through the rear window. The man on the motorcycle was still there, still watching, growing smaller as the cruiser drove away. He did not know who the man was. He did not know that he was the one who found Lily. He did not know that he had carried her inside, wrapped her in his jacket, saved her life, while Dean was drinking himself to sleep. But he felt it. He felt the weight of being seen. Stone watched the cruiser disappear down the dark highway. The lights faded. The engine sound drifted away. The parking lot fell silent. He sat on his bike for another minute. The cold pressed against his arms and his chest. He had not worn his jacket since he wrapped it around the girl. He did not care. It was over. The man who left a child to die was in custody. He would face charges. He would stand trial. He would answer for what he did. Stone started his engine. The motorcycle rumbled beneath him. He pulled out of the lot and turned west, back toward Miller's Crossing. Halfway there, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled over to the side of the road and checked the message. It was from Ridge. She wants to meet you. The mother. She asked the hospital to find you. Says she needs to thank you in person. Stone stared at the words on the screen. His chest tightened. His hands gripped the phone harder than they needed to. He had not spoken to a child's mother since Emma's funeral. 12 years ago. A different hospital. A different parking lot. A different kind of ending. He remembered Rachel's face that day. The way she looked at him without seeing him. The way her hand slipped out of his and never reached for him again. He did not know if he could do this. He did not know if he was ready to stand in front of another mother and accept words he was not sure he deserved. The engine idled beneath him. The road stretched ahead, empty and dark. He put the phone back in his pocket and did not move. Stone pulled into the hospital parking lot just after 9 in the morning. The sun was out for the first time in days. The snow had stopped falling. The world looked different in the light. He had not slept. He had spent the night riding back to the diner, sitting with his brothers, saying very little. Ridge had watched him without asking questions. The others gave him space. They knew something had shifted inside him. They did not push. Now he stood beside his motorcycle, holding his leather jacket over one arm. He had changed into a clean flannel shirt and a pair of jeans that did not smell like engine oil. He had washed his face in a gas station bathroom. He had pulled the bandana off and left it in his saddlebag. He did not know what he was supposed to say. He did not know what the woman expected from him. He only knew that she had asked to meet him, and he could not say no. The hospital lobby was quiet. A few nurses moved between hallways. An elderly man sat in a wheelchair near the window, staring at the sunlight. A television mounted on the wall played the morning news, with the sound turned low. Stone saw her before she saw him. She was standing near the information desk, talking to a nurse. She was smaller than he expected. Her shoulders were hunched forward. Her hands trembled at her sides. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. The nurse pointed toward Stone. Sarah turned. Their eyes met across the lobby. She did not say anything. She did not wave or call out his name. She simply walked toward him. Her steps were slow at first, then faster. By the time she reached him, she was almost running. She wrapped her arms around him. Her face pressed against his chest. Her body shook with silent sobs. Stone stood frozen. His arms hung at his sides. He had not been embraced like this in years. He had forgotten what it felt like to be held by someone who meant it. Slowly, carefully, he raised his arms and placed them around her shoulders. He held her gently, the way he used to hold Emma after a nightmare. He did not speak. He did not need to. They stood like that for a long time. The lobby moved around them. People passed without staring. The world gave them space. When Sarah finally stepped back, her face was wet with tears. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and looked up at him. "Thank you." Stone shook his head. "I did what anyone should have done." Sarah's voice cracked. "Most people didn't. Most people walked right past her. I've seen the security footage. Dozens of people passed that bench. None of them stopped." She pressed her hand against her chest. "You were the only one." Stone did not know how to respond. He looked at the floor, then at the window, then back at her face. "Is she okay?" Sarah nodded. "She's awake. She's talking. The doctors say she'll recover." Her voice dropped. "She asked about you. She remembered someone carrying her. She remembered feeling warm." Stone's throat tightened. He thought about the girl's face when her eyes had opened for a moment in his arms. The fear and hope mixed together. The way her fingers had reached for something that was not there. They walked to the cafeteria and sat at a small table in the corner. The room was nearly empty. A few staff members ate breakfast at nearby tables, not paying attention to them. Sarah talked. Stone listened. She told him about the years of struggle, the double shifts at the diner, the empty apartment, and the locked doors. She told him about Dean, about the fear that never fully went away, about the moment she realized her daughter was gone. Stone did not interrupt. He did not offer advice or judgment. He just listened, the way he wished someone had listened to him 12 years ago. When she finished, Sarah looked at his jacket. "Can I give Lily something? Something to remind her that good people exist?" Stone hesitated. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small metal pin. It was not a full patch, not the club's main emblem. It was a secondary symbol, one that members sometimes gave to people under their protection. He placed it in Sarah's palm. "Tell her she's not alone." Sarah's fingers closed around the pin. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. That afternoon, Sarah brought the pin to Lily's hospital room. Lily was sitting up in bed, eating crackers from a paper cup. Her color had returned. Her eyes were brighter. Sarah held out the pin. "The man who found you wanted you to have this." Lily took it carefully. She studied the symbol, tracing its edges with her fingertip. Then she pinned it to her hospital gown, right over her heart. She looked at her mother and said, "I feel safe now." That evening, Stone sat alone at the diner counter. drinking coffee that had gone cold. His phone buzzed. A message from Ridge. He read it twice, then a third time. The club had made a decision. They wanted to help Miller's Crossing learn how to protect its children. They wanted Stone to lead the effort. He set the phone down and stared through the window at the darkening sky. The courtroom was full, every seat taken. People stood along the back wall, watching in silence. The trial of Dean Hollister had drawn attention far beyond Miller's Crossing. Reporters filled the first two rows. Community members sat behind them, their faces tense, their eyes fixed on the man in the defendant's chair. Dean sat with his shoulders hunched forward, his hands folded on the table in front of him. His public defender leaned close, whispering something in his ear. Dean did not respond. His eyes stayed on the wooden surface in front of him. He had not looked at anyone in the gallery since the trial began. The prosecutor stood near the jury box, holding a clear plastic bag. Inside was a piece of torn cardboard. The words were still visible through the plastic. No one's child. She held it up so the jury could see. This was found beside a 7-year-old girl who was left to freeze to death on a train station bench. The defendant's fingerprints are on this sign. His handwriting matches samples taken from his motel room. He made this. He placed it beside her. He wanted whoever found her body to know she had been abandoned on purpose. Dean's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. The prosecutor continued. She presented the text message Dean had sent to Sarah. She read it aloud. She's safe. For now. Meet me at the rail yard. Alone. If you call anyone, she won't be. The words hung in the air. Several members of the jury shifted in their seats. She presented receipts from the motel where Dean had stayed. She presented text messages he had sent to friends in the weeks before the abduction. Messages where he talked about making Sarah pay, about teaching her a lesson she would never forget. Dean's lawyer tried to argue that his client was a heartbroken man who made poor decisions under emotional stress. The prosecutor dismantled this claim with cold precision. She pointed to the planning, the surveillance, the timing, the sign. This was not a moment of weakness. This was calculated cruelty. Sarah took the stand on the third day. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled in her lap. She answered every question the prosecutor asked. She described the night she came home and found Lily gone. She described the text message. She described the rail yard, the waiting, the fear that ate through her chest while her daughter lay freezing 15 miles away. The defense attorney asked if she had ever provoked Dean, if she had led him on, if she had given him reason to believe they might reconcile. Sarah looked at him without flinching. I told him it was over. I told him to leave. I changed my locks. I stopped answering his calls. That was 2 years ago. He chose not to listen. Lily did not testify. The court determined that her trauma was too fresh, her age too young, her recovery too fragile. But her medical records were entered as evidence. Hypothermia, dehydration, psychological shock, the physical evidence of what Dean had done to her. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. They returned with a verdict on all counts. Guilty of child endangerment, guilty of kidnapping, guilty of stalking, guilty. Dean stood when the verdict was read. His face did not change. His eyes stayed on the floor. He did not look at Sarah or at the gallery behind her. The judge handed down the sentence. 18 years in state prison. No possibility of parole for the first 12. As the bailiffs led Dean from the courtroom, he walked with his head down. His footsteps echoed against the tile floor. He did not look back. He did not speak. The door closed behind him, and he was gone. Outside the courthouse, the sun was shining. A small crowd had gathered on the steps. Neighbors from Miller's Crossing, staff from the hospital, members of Stone's club, standing quietly at the edge of the crowd in their leather jackets. They had come to show support. They said nothing. They did not need to. Sarah walked through the front doors with Lily beside her. Cameras flashed. Microphones extended toward her face. Reporters called her name. She did not stop. She held Lily's hand and walked toward the black sedan waiting at the curb. A member of the club held the door open for her. Sarah lifted Lily into the car seat and buckled the straps around her shoulders. Lily clutched a small stuffed rabbit against her chest. The pin Stone had given her was still fastened to her jacket. A journalist stepped forward before Sarah could close the door. She was young, with kind eyes and a quiet voice. Miss Brennan, would you be willing to share your story? To help other families recognize the warning signs? Sarah paused. Her hand rested on the doorframe. She looked at Lily, then at the crowd. then at the journalist. She did not say yes, but she did not say no. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor of her bedroom, a box of crayons scattered around her. She held a black crayon in her right hand, pressing it against the paper with careful strokes. The shape forming on the page had two wheels, a long body, and handlebars that curved upward. Sarah stood in the doorway, watching. She did not interrupt. These moments had become precious over the past 6 months. Lily drawing, Lily humming softly to herself, Lily present in the room instead of somewhere far away. The nightmares still came. 2 or 3 times a week, Lily would wake up crying, reaching for her mother in the dark, but they were less frequent now, less intense. The therapist said this was progress. She said Lily was processing her trauma through creativity. She said the drawings were healthy. Lily picked up a brown crayon and added a figure beside the motorcycle. Broad shoulders, a jacket with patches on the back. No face, just the shape of someone standing tall. Sarah's throat tightened. She recognized the figure. She had seen it in dozens of drawings over the past few months. She walked into the room and sat down on the edge of Lily's bed. "That's a nice picture." Lily looked up. Her eyes were clearer now than they had been in the hospital. The shadows were still there, but they did not fill the whole space anymore. "It's stone." Sarah nodded. "I know." The new apartment was smaller than the room above the laundromat, but it felt safer. New locks on the door, new curtains on the windows. A neighborhood where people waved when they saw you on the street. Sarah had stopped working at the diner 3 months ago. The publicity from the trial had reached people beyond Miller's Crossing. A victims' advocacy organization had contacted her, offered her a position as a community outreach coordinator. She said yes without hesitation. Now she spent her days helping families who had been through what she had been through. She sat with mothers in police stations. She walked with children into therapists' offices. She explained court procedures and connected people with resources they did not know existed. It was not easy work. Some days it pulled the old wounds open again. But it also gave her purpose. It reminded her that she was not alone, and neither was anyone else. Stone came once a month. He never called ahead. He would just appear on his motorcycle, parking at the curb outside the apartment building. He brought small things each time. A book about horses because Lily had mentioned she liked them. A puzzle with 500 pieces. A stuffed bear that Lily had named Stone Jr. He never stayed long. An hour at most. He sat on the porch with Sarah while Lily played inside, and they talked about the weather, the town, the small changes happening in Miller's Crossing. They did not talk about the night he found her. That silence had become a kind of agreement between them. Some things did not need to be said out loud. The club had kept its promise. Ridge had organized a partnership with the local elementary school. Twice a month, members came to teach children about personal safety. They wore their leather jackets and answered questions about motorcycles, but the lessons were about something deeper. Recognizing danger, trusting instincts, knowing who to tell when something felt wrong. They hosted workshops for parents too. Sessions on grooming behavior, warning signs of domestic violence, resources for families in crisis. The flyers went up in grocery stores, laundromats, and the bulletin board outside the post office. People who used to cross the street when they saw the club now nodded in greeting. Some even stopped to talk. The fear had faded. In its place was something that looked like respect. On a warm afternoon in early autumn, Stone sat on his bike outside Sarah's apartment. The engine was off. His hands rested on his thighs. He was watching the front window. Lily appeared behind the glass. She pressed her palm against the pane and waved. Her face was brighter now. Her smile came easier. Stone raised his hand and waved back. He held the gesture for a moment, then lowered his arm and started the engine. The motorcycle rumbled beneath him. He pulled away from the curb and disappeared down the street. The following week, a letter arrived in his mailbox. It was addressed by hand, the letters uneven and careful. The return address was Sarah's apartment. Stone opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a piece of paper, folded twice. He unfolded it and looked at the drawing. A motorcycle. A man in a leather jacket standing beside it. A small figure with dark hair holding the man's hand. In the corner, a yellow sun shined down on both of them. At the bottom of the page, in letters that tilted slightly to the left, Lily had written 4 words. "Thank you for finding me." Stone held the drawing for a long time. He did not move. He did not speak. He just sat in his kitchen, alone, and let the weight of those words settle into his chest. The crowd filled the park at the center of Miller's Crossing. Hundreds of people moved between booths, their voices blending into a steady hum. Children ran across the grass, laughing, chasing each other between tables covered in pamphlets and banners. 1 year had passed since the night at the train station. Stone stood near the small stage at the edge of the gathering. He wore his leather jacket, patches visible on the back. His brothers stood nearby, spread out across the park, watching the crowd with calm eyes. They were not here for trouble. They were here because they had helped build this. A police officer walked past and nodded at Stone. He nodded back. A year ago, that officer might have reached for his radio at the sight of the club. Now he extended his hand and shook Stone's before moving on. The banner above the stage read Community Protection Day. It had been Sarah's idea, but the club and the police department had made it happen. Booths offered information on child safety, bystander intervention, domestic violence resources. Volunteers handed out pamphlets with hotline numbers and checklists for recognizing warning signs. A woman from the school district stepped onto the stage and tapped the microphone. The crowd quieted. She introduced the event, thanked the sponsors, and then gestured towards Stone. He walked up the 3 wooden steps and stood behind the microphone. He did not look at notes. He did not rehearse what he was going to say. He just looked at the crowd and spoke. "I'm not good at speeches. Never have been. But I'm going to try." The crowd stayed quiet. Parents held their children close. Grandparents leaned forward in their folding chairs. "A year ago, I stopped at a train station because I needed fuel. I wasn't looking for anything else. I just wanted to fill up my tank and keep riding." He paused. "But I saw a little girl on a bench, and I stopped." He looked down for a moment, then back up. Most people didn't. Dozens of people walked past her that night. Some of them looked, some of them even slowed down, but none of them stopped. Not until I did. He let the words hang in the air. "I'm not here to tell you I'm special. I'm not. I'm just a guy who made a choice. The same choice any of you could make. The same choice all of us should make." His voice grew quieter but steadier. "Kids can't always tell us when they're in danger. Sometimes they're scared. Sometimes they've been told to stay quiet. Sometimes they don't have the words. But they show us. Through their silence, through their body language, through the fear hiding behind their eyes." He looked out at the children scattered through the crowd. "It's our job to pay attention. All of us. Every adult in this town. In every town. We are the ones who have to see what kids can't say." He stepped back from the microphone. The applause started slowly, then swelled. Parents stood. Teachers wiped their eyes. Officers clapped with their hands above their heads. Stone walked down the steps and stopped at the edge of the stage. Sarah was there, holding Lily's hand. Lily was taller now. Stronger. Her cheeks had color again. She wore a purple dress and white shoes, and pinned to her chest was the small emblem Stone had given her in the hospital. She let go of her mother's hand and walked toward him. The crowd watched in silence. Lily wrapped her arms around Stone's waist and pressed her face against his jacket. He placed one hand on her back and held her gently. The photographer from the local paper lifted his camera and captured the moment. That image would be shared by news outlets across the state. The biker and the girl, the rescue and the recovery, the story that reminded people what community was supposed to mean. Sarah gave an interview to the journalist who had approached her after the trial. The article ran in papers across the country. It included resources for recognizing abduction, warning signs, information on restraining orders, and a message of hope for anyone still trapped in a dangerous situation. The club continued its work. They partnered with more schools. They trained volunteers. They showed up at town events and community meetings, not as outsiders, but as protectors. As the afternoon wore on, the crowd began to thin. Families packed up their belongings and headed home. Volunteers folded tables and stacked chairs. Stone stood at the edge of the park, watching. For the first time in 12 years, the weight on his chest felt lighter. He did not feel whole. He would never feel whole. But he felt something close to peace. A woman approached him. She was young, maybe 30, with tired eyes and a nervous posture. She held the hand of a small boy, maybe 5 years old. The boy looked at the ground. He did not speak. The woman stopped a few feet away. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I read about what you did. For that little girl." Stone looked at her. He waited. She glanced at her son, then back at Stone. "I'm in a situation. I don't know how to get out." Her voice cracked. "Can you help?" Stone looked at the woman standing before him. Her name was Angela. Her hands trembled at her sides. Her son Noah pressed close against her leg, his eyes fixed on the ground. She told him her story in short, broken sentences. A husband who controlled everything. The money, the phone, the car keys, the doors that locked from the outside. She told him about the threats, what would happen if she tried to leave, what he said he would do to Noah. Stone listened without interrupting. His face stayed calm. His eyes never left hers. When she finished, the silence stretched between them. Angela wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Her voice cracked. I don't know what to do. I don't have anywhere to go. Stone nodded slowly. He did not reach for her. He did not make grand promises. He had learned a long time ago that words without action meant nothing. You're not alone anymore, he said. There are people who can help. Real help. Legal. Safe. He turned and looked across the park. Sarah was standing near one of the booths, talking with a volunteer. Stone raised his hand and motioned for her to come. Sarah walked over. Her eyes moved from Stone to Angela to the small boy at her side. She understood immediately. She had seen this look before. She had worn this look herself. Stone spoke quietly. This is Sarah. She knows the resources, the shelters, the legal pathways. She's been where you are. Angela looked at Sarah. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Sarah reached out and took her hand. She did not say anything complicated. She just said, We're going to figure this out together. Two of Stone's brothers approached. They were older men, steady and quiet. One of them specialized in protective transitions. He had helped dozens of people escape dangerous situations over the years. He knew how to move carefully. He knew how to keep people safe. They formed a small circle around Angela and Noah. Not crowding, not threatening, just present, just solid. Stone knelt down until he was at Noah's level. The boy looked up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. His lip trembled. His small fingers gripped the hem of his mother's shirt. Stone kept his voice soft. You're going to be okay. There are people here who will make sure of it. Noah did not speak, but something in his face shifted, a tiny loosening of the fear that had been holding him tight. Angela looked at Sarah, then at the men surrounding her, then at Stone. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Stone stood up. He looked at her for a moment before answering. Because someone should. The afternoon faded into evening. Angela and Noah were taken to a safe location by volunteers trained for exactly this kind of transition. Sarah stayed with them, making calls, coordinating resources, doing the work she had been doing for nearly a year now. Stone watched them go. He stood at the edge of the park as the sun dipped lower in the sky. The crowd had thinned. The booths were being packed away. Children's laughter still echoed across the grass, but softer now. He thought about the girl on the bench. The night he almost walked away. The moment he made a choice that changed everything. Lily's survival had led to Sarah's advocacy. Sarah's work had led to the club's involvement in the community. And that involvement had led to Angela and Noah finding help when they needed it most. One rescue had rippled outward in ways Stone never could have predicted. One decision had set something in motion that was still moving, still growing, still saving lives he would never know about. He walked to his motorcycle and climbed on. The engine rumbled to life beneath him. The sound was familiar, steady, grounding. He pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward the edge of town. The road stretched ahead, long and open. The sky was painted in shades of orange and gold. The wind pressed against his chest as he picked up speed. He did not know what he would find around the next bend. He did not know whose path would cross his. But he knew who he was now. He knew why he rode. He was not searching for redemption anymore. He was not running from the past. He was moving forward, carrying everything he had learned, everything he had lost, everything he had found. The road curved ahead. Stone leaned into it. Behind him, the lights of Miller's Crossing grew smaller in his mirrors. Ahead, the horizon stretched wide and uncertain. He rode toward it without hesitation. This is why stories like this matter. Not because they have happy endings, but because they remind us what is possible. They remind us that ordinary people make extraordinary choices every day. They remind us that paying attention, stepping forward, refusing to look away can change everything. A child was saved because a stranger stopped. A mother found hope because a community cared. A broken man found purpose because he refused to let the past define his future. And somewhere out there, another story is waiting to be told. Lily Brennan was almost invisible that night. A small shape curled on a frozen bench, bare feet, thin dress, a cardboard sign that declared her worthless. She lay there while the snow fell around her, while travelers moved past with their heads down, while the world kept spinning without noticing that a child was dying in the cold. Dozens of people walked by. Some of them glanced. Some of them slowed their steps for a moment. But none of them stopped. None of them asked if she was okay. None of them pulled out their phone or flagged down a worker or wrapped their coat around her shoulders. They assumed someone else would handle it. They assumed it was not their problem. They assumed that a child on a bench in the middle of the night must belong to someone, must be waiting for someone, must be someone else's responsibility. Stone did not assume. He saw a girl in danger, and he made a choice that could have cost him everything: his reputation, his freedom, his life. He was a man in leather and patches, kneeling beside a child in the dark. He knew how it looked. He knew what people would think. He made the choice anyway, because he understood something that too many people forget. Children cannot protect themselves. They depend on adults to see them, to hear them, to act when something is wrong, and when every adult looks away, a child has no one left. Heroism is rarely loud. It is rarely dramatic. It does not come with applause or recognition or a crowd of people cheering your name. Most heroism happens in silence, in small decisions, in the willingness to act when action is uncomfortable, inconvenient, or risky. Stone did not want recognition. He did not ask for thanks or praise or attention. He wanted one thing. He wanted Lily to survive. And she did. She survived because a stranger stopped. Because a man who looked like someone you might cross the street to avoid turned out to be the only person that night who cared enough to kneel in the snow. This story is not about Stone being special. He would be the first to tell you that. This story is about what happens when one person pays attention. What happens when one person refuses to look away? What happens when one person decides that a child's life is worth more than their own comfort? The question is simple. What would you do? If you saw a child on a bench in the cold, would you stop? If you noticed a little girl whose eyes were too quiet, whose posture was too still, whose fear was hidden behind silence, would you kneel down and ask if she was okay? Would you risk the suspicion, the inconvenience, the strange looks from people who might not understand what you were doing? Would you pay attention? Children send signals when they are in danger. Most of the time, those signals are not loud. They are not screams or cries for help. They are silences, stillnesses. The way a child freezes when a certain adult walks into the room. The way a child stops talking, stops making eye contact, stops asking for things. These signals are easy to miss if you are not looking. They are easy to ignore if you do not want to get involved. But they are always there. Every child in danger is trying to tell someone. The question is whether anyone is listening. The story of Stone and Lily is not an exception. It is a template. It proves that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. It proves that the choice to act is always available, always possible, always within reach. One person changed everything that night. One person can change everything any night. On a spring morning, 1 year and 4 months after the night at the train station, Lily Brennan walked to school. The sun was warm on her face. Her backpack bounced against her shoulders. She was smiling. Pinned to the strap of her backpack was a small metal emblem, the same one Stone had given her in the hospital. She wore it every day now, not because she needed to remember what happened, but because it reminded her that she was protected. She walked down the sidewalk without looking back. She did not need to. She knew there were people in the world who would stop for her, people who would see her, people who would act. She was not invisible anymore. The world is full of children who need someone to pay attention. They are in schools and parks and grocery stores. They are in quiet neighborhoods and crowded cities. They are waiting for someone to notice, waiting for someone to stop, waiting for someone to care. You have the power to be that someone. The choice is always available. The only question is what you will do with it.